You made it back. I'm so glad. I hope your session has been good tonight. I hope you're connecting with your friends in your new small group or in your existing small group. And I'm hopeful that as we talk tonight about what it means to be a local church, that will benefit you and draw you closer. Hope you'll stick around and answer some of the questions that are coming in your small group, and that you'll answer openly and have a good discussion. The discussion tonight is really about what a church does. Last time we were together, we talked about what a church is, and we identified those four analogies that stick together and make us understand a little bit better what a church is. Today, I want to talk about what a church does. And as I talk about what a church does, I'm mindful of something that I've learned to do in my years here at Marsh Corner. Some years ago at Marsh, it seemed like all of our elders that came on the board they were all Lego fans. Now, I had never built a Lego in my entire life, but they would talk about this Lego set and that Lego set, and I'm thinking to myself, these are adults talking about a children's toy. Well, just to see what it was all about, and I had the drive too, because my grandchildren would all love to build Legos, and so out of interest, I went out and I bought myself a Lego set. And it was fun. It was lots of fun. Putting all of those blocks together and making them fit. And the thing about them is that you can have the same block fit into a different block in a different way. They all fit together. They have an obvious bottom and they have an obvious top, and together they build it up into houses and cars and all kinds of crazy and interesting things. God has called us to make connections, just like being Lego blocks. He's put us in places in our church where we have things in common, and where we're that body idea of working together with our own individual strengths and our own individual weaknesses to make us something great. And as I talk today about what a church does, I want to do that in the context of our church's statement on who we are. Many years ago, we decided to consider what it is that Marsh Corner is all about, and use a phrase that enables people to see us and understand what our drive is and what it is that we're trying to do. And the phrase that we came up with is that we are connecting all generations to Jesus. We're like Lego blocks. Our responsibility is not just to connect to one another, but to connect to blocks that are not like ourselves. It's not like we're making a single wall of blocks that are all the same and all the same shape and all of the same color. We're connecting blocks that are different into something that is fantastic. We are connecting all generations to Jesus. Now, the moment we connect to one another is the moment that we actually start to make something happen. You see, by myself, I'm just a block. But the moment I start connecting with other blocks and other people in the church and putting ourselves together in the way that God has designed us, that's the moment we actually become a church, and that's the moment we actually start making something happen. So, what is it that we're after? What is it that we're trying to make of all generations? And what is it that Jesus wants us to be? Well, I think that connecting all generations to Jesus is about making disciples. It's not about making the largest church in New England. It's not even about a lot of other things that people think of when it comes to church. A lot of times we think that coming to church is about making friends. Maybe you were new in our community at one point. Maybe you were new to Methuen or Salem. And one of the things that you decided to do was you said, well, I don't know anybody here in my community, so maybe I'll go to church, and in going to church, I'll make friends. So a lot of people do that. A lot of people come to church because they're in the process of making friends. They're trying to find people who have similar attitudes and similar functions. And quite honestly, when it comes to making friends in a local church, thinking about Jesus really isn't part of that. And being a disciple isn't necessarily part of that. It's about finding community, and community is awesome. But as I said, our community in Marsh Corner is because we have something greater in common in Jesus. It's not even about making memories. I know that there are people that come to church because in being in a community, they're going to make memories. I mean, some of my favorite memories actually center on Christmas and Christmas pageants. I remember being at one Christmas pageant, and these are the things that make it to America's Funniest Home Videos. I remember at one Christmas pageant, there was one little guy up in the front as they're singing Away in the Manger, and he's got his guns out and he's shooting everybody in the crowd. It was funny. It was a great memory. It's those things that we remember. And so some people come to church to make memories or to keep memories. Sometimes it's difficult if you've been away from church for a long, long time, and your experience in church was singing hymns or reciting the Lord's Prayer every Sunday, which is a wonderful thing to recite, and everybody should know it. But there are churches whose goal is to make memories, and when a person is maybe out of church for a long time, or they come into a new community like ours, where we're singing songs that worship the Lord, that we connect with as a local body, that may be a little bit more contemporary than others. For those folks, it's not about the memories anymore. They're not really into making new memories. They're into living and existing in their old memories. So churches aren't about making memories, and they're good. I mean, we make memories, and churches are really not about making large community efforts like going and feeding the poor. You understand that, right? Going and feeding the poor as a local church, that's actually a byproduct of what it is that we do. We love the poor. We should minister to the poor. But we minister to the poor because of the other things that we're making, and not because we've gathered together to be helpers of the poor. Those actually work really well for groups like the Red Cross, or maybe even Samaritan's Purse. Groups of people who have compassion, and the church has compassion, but that's not what we're making. There are those who come to church because they want to make a difference. They want to invest in other people's lives, and that's fantastic, and we're glad if you want to make a difference. But you're only going to make a difference at Marsh Corner if you understand that you're part of our fellowship, and as our fellowship, we're about connecting all generations to Jesus, which means that we have the goal of making disciples. Now, I've said that a bunch of times. So what is it that I mean when I say that we are after making disciples of Jesus Christ? What is the driving force there? And the driving force there is Jesus, because Jesus says in Matthew chapter 28, "Go therefore into all of the world and make disciples, and baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them all of the things that I've commanded you." So what is it that we're trying to make when we say we're making a disciple? So some people think that making disciples means leading people to Jesus. And yes, that's a big part of this project, is leading people to a place where they understand who Jesus is. And they're at that point in their lives where they say, I can't save myself. I need Jesus in my life. That's what we want. We want to get people there, but we want to get people past there. It's not just about making a convert, in other words. It's about making a disciple. So what is a disciple? Well, the word disciple comes from the idea of a learning one, somebody who wants to learn, who wants to specifically identify with a rabbi. Isn't it interesting that in this passage, Jesus identifies what a disciple is, because he says make disciples of all nations. So it's not just Jews, it's not just Greeks, it's everybody. It's people. It's people. Wherever the people are, whatever nation they come from, that's who we should be looking. So Jesus says, I want you to make disciples of all nations. A disciple identifies. They are baptized. They're not a closet person. They're willing to say, I've trusted Jesus and I want everybody to see it. That's one of the reasons why we often baptize at the beach or here on Easter Sunday, when there are going to be more people actually tuning in and watching us than on any other regular day. It's because the effort of being a disciple means that I need to identify myself with Jesus, and I can identify myself with Jesus by raising my hand and responding to an invitation, but the only people who see that are God and the pastor and the little kid in the balcony who can't keep his eyes closed. Oh, did I just let everybody know about that? Being a disciple means being bold about who it is that you've followed, and that's why we baptize. Jesus says, go into the world, make disciples, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So, in other words, there's an identification, and that's an identification that's very specific. You've identified yourself with the triune God, with the one true God who exists in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then he says, once they've identified with that, teach them everything that I've commanded you. It goes back to that statement we made last week, or in our last session, about how our fellowship centers itself on the apostles' the apostles' teaching and on breaking bread and praying together. We have something to learn. We have some place to put ourselves. There was a pastor some years ago who talked about the dust of your rabbi. He said that in Jesus' day, to follow a rabbi meant that you wanted to get close to him, you wanted to understand everything that there was for that rabbi to teach, and you wanted to make sure you didn't miss a thing. And so you would want to get so close that the dust that came off his shoes was the dust that was on your clothing, because you were always there, and as he was walking, you were walking so close to him that everything he said and the dust that would come off of his shoes would come over you. That's what being a disciple is all about. It's being and learning to be so close to Jesus, so connected to Jesus, that everything about him is falling on you and changing you and making you look and smell and feel and understand exactly what Jesus is. So here at Marsh, we want to make disciples. And the way we see ourselves as making disciples is we want to get you close to Jesus. We want to connect you to Jesus. In connecting you to Jesus, we are saying we want you to choose to learn everything you can about Jesus. Not only do we want you to connect yourselves so that you can learn everything that you can about Jesus, we want you to connect with Jesus so that wherever Jesus goes, you're ready to follow him. Interesting truth. Do you realize that Jesus never tells his disciples, you need to love me? Oh, there's challenges like John chapter 14, Jesus says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. But Jesus understands that his disciples' love for him is something that's actually secondary. It's secondary to something very, very important. It's what Jesus asked of his disciples. He said, follow me. Follow me. I'm going to close with this interesting story in John chapter 11. I always get these two chapters mixed up, but John chapter 11. You remember that Lazarus dies? Lazarus lives in a very close city, Bethany, to Jerusalem, and at that moment in Jesus' life, Jerusalem was filled with people that hated him and wanted him dead. Jesus is off across the Jordan River in a place called Perea, and he finds out about Lazarus dying, and he says, okay, we have to go, and we have to take care of this. And his disciples say, but Lazarus is dead, why are we going? He says, because I need to go and demonstrate that I'm God. And Thomas says, all right, guys, in Thomas's only way, he says, all right, guys, if he's gonna die, I guess we should go and die with him. They were willing, though there were issues, you see that at the Garden of Gethsemane, they were willing, at least in the mouth of Thomas, to follow Jesus to the death, because Jesus said to them, follow me. We're here at Marsh Corner to connect all generations to Jesus, to teach our children to follow Jesus, and in following Jesus, they'll love him. We're here at Marsh Corner Community Church to connect all generations to Jesus, because we believe that teens and young adults need to be connected to Jesus by following him and by learning everything that he has for them so that they can truly love him. We're here at Marsh Corner Community Church connecting all generations to Jesus, because even senior citizens need to be challenged about what's significant and important in our world. And on a daily basis, they need to be challenged to follow Jesus and to be connected to Jesus and put into practice the things that they've learned over their lifetime, and to truly act like disciples, those who are never, ever tired of learning more. It's what a church does.